Hey, it's That Skydive Sim Guy here again with Brian Germain. How are you, Brian?
Hey, I'm doing great.
I haven't done these podcasts in a while. We'll get into that, to the why of that in a little bit. But you have a new book out, and I kind of want to start off with that. Tell me about it.
I got a bunch of new stuff. Well, yeah, the new book is it's called Lift. And we're still now in the publishing and editing phase of it. But what I've been doing is offering the ability to buy it, so you get the first copy because the first print run always runs out really quick.
Right.
But yeah, Lift, it's not specifically about the physics of flight. It's more the metaphorical concepts that can act as an upliftment to the human mind. And I feel like that's kind of an important thing. We have so many reasons to, get down in the mouth. and there has to be, a sort of a touchstone. That's what I intended this book to be, where you just leave it in your house, you leave it in the bathroom or something, and you just flip to a page, and that paragraph or that section, just you walk away going, all right, now I remember. I remember my original happiness that I had as a kid. And it's really what I'm trying to foster. It's what I've done with a lot of my other books as well.
Right.
But this is a much wider market. This one's for everybody.
Oh, great. When do you think it will be out?
Oh, anytime now. I mean, it should be hopefully a month, unless the big publisher goes for it. And then sometimes that takes a little longer, but it's an even bigger market, right?
Right.
Because I've been a self-published author since 2004 or something like that.
Well, you wrote the book on canopy flight, and I've come across it so many times. People talking about that. Actually, it's like he literally wrote the book on how to fly a canopy.
That was a lot of work. Yeah, the parachute and its pilot. It was, and it's on its 5th edition, right? I mean, the first edition was good. It was definitely better than the nothing that existed on the topic at that point. But now it's not just thicker, but it has more wisdom from more angles. Because my goal with that and everything else that I do is to keep people from getting hurt.
That's true.
And I think that the skydiving people and their families deserve more. They deserve a deeper education on the holistic process that leads to safety. It's not just, how and when you pull your toggles.
Right. I remember actually when I got hurt early on, my coach actually referred me to some of your videos on how to land safely and things like that. So I know you have a huge library of that as well.
There's a couple of them. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's approaching 850.
Oh, wow.
Just the YouTube videos that are currently live. There's others too that are no longer live.
Right.
And those are quickies, you know what I mean? Where it's like 15 minutes or less most of the time in the education videos. But I also created a lot of videos with help. It wasn't just me and those are available on adventurewisdom.com. So those have, the organizing PowerPoint and lists, keep me on track so I don't forget stuff and that kind of thing. And I'm really proud of how that stuff came out.
Right.
Yeah. So that's.
Yeah. And you also actually have a group that you do Zoom with once a week, right? You kind of
go through. Actually, we're up to 3 times a week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the group grew, and I want to make sure everybody gets personal attention. Some of the meetings ends up being just one person. Sometimes it's more. The Wednesday session is very interesting because that's where it ties into what you've created.
Okay.
So we do meetups with on the goggles, as it were, on VR, utilizing Skydive Sim. And I can teach non-locally, all over the world, and help people to understand concepts that are a little hard to communicate without that 3D environment. It's really, it's a godsend. It's an Amir thing.
It's amazing. It's funny because we were talking, and there was someone I met on Reddit that was new to the game, and he was telling me he's new to learning skydiving, and he said, "What do you think about me using this?" I said, I think you should probably meet with a coach. I mentioned your name. I told him that you're doing the Wednesday night multiplayer thing, and I said the reason for that is you might be thinking in your head that you're doing okay and you're learning things, but there are
Sure.
some bad habits that you can be growing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. When I watch my kids flying the VR, they can hit a target every time. And of course they've sat into my canopy courses, they've heard stuff, but they don't fly a pattern like you and me.
I see.
You know, they wouldn't fit in with traffic because they learned the secret of get a certain distance from the target and slowly circle around it until you see, as you lock off to the side, the angle starts to lift up. And now that matches the angle of the glide of the canopy. Turn and face the target at that moment. Bob's your uncle. You got a dead center.
Right.
So that my youngest son, who's now 12, I think when he was 10, got the lowest score, the closest to the target
Oh, wow. Okay.
of anybody in history. That was actually utilizing the other system,
Yeah.
you know, that sort of led here, I think.
Right.
But yeah, it's, I think, an incredibly valuable tool for an up and coming skydiver. And yes, it's not exactly the same thing. It's not a replacement
No,
for
definitely.
actual physical skydiving, and it doesn't blow your hair back as much, but you can learn things by making mistakes that don't hurt.
True.
That's no ladder required to get the dude out of a tree.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, going to a new drop zone, for example, I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, I'm going to a new drop zone and I just got into
Yep.
sim and did like 10 jumps and then they feel comfortable. There's something about seeing it in VR from above that you're like, okay, I've been here before, and you automatically have some landmarks in your head. So you know
Yep.
where you have to go, where to land.
It reduces stress. Just that alone, even if the canopy dynamics weren't as good as they are, even if you didn't have the multiplayer mode and all that stuff, at the very least, you get that 3-dimensional perspective.
Right.
And you can learn, where am I actually going to? Where's that point that's just getting bigger and not going up or down as I look forward? You get to see it instead of just this, an instructor
Right.
describing it on a whiteboard, drawing it out with dry erase markers. That's not the real
I
thing.
ran into that recently myself a couple of weeks ago. We did a promotion in Miami with New Balance. They had a new
Mhm.
shoe, and there was a venue that it was a VR venue, and they were doing
Mhm.
a release party, and they wanted to use Skydive Sim. It's not the full version; it's
Mhm.
arcade version of
Yep.
Skydive Sim. But for the
Right.
people that are there, put the headsets on and jump off over Miami, and then land in front of the building. So
Yep.
first thing I did was I went to Google Earth and I looked and familiarized myself with the area. But when I jumped, I realized it took me about 3 different jumps. I would have to get off the goggles, look at the landmarks again to know, okay, because this is in the middle of a city kind of thing. It's like you
Yeah.
got buildings, and I'm like, okay, I see grass over here, I see this, and then I had, but after a few times in Skydive Sim, when my plane was going over Miami, I was like, oh, I know this area. This is the area I was flying over. So there's
Yeah.
something about actually doing it in a sim rather than just looking at that 2D Google Earth image.
Yep. It's the future.
It is.
I mean, we know that this is how airline pilots learn and get current,
Right,
right? I mean, if you want to get, type rated or something in an aircraft, you do have to do your initial type rating on a physical plane.
right.
But as far as recurrency and loggable time, you can actually just sit down in a sim because they're so realistic and so
For
valuable.
airplanes, you mean?
And
Right.
now, I mean, we can't log our skydive
I
sim
wish we
jumps yet.
could. I would have had thousands of jumps more by now.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, then it would be ridiculous numbers because I literally have thousands too on
Right.
the system. This and other systems,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Um, but yeah, this is the most fun of all the different skydiving simulators that I've
I
flown.
think it's also the most accessible, which makes it different, right? Because I saw the one they
Yep,
had at PIA, which I know Ronnie had used his
yep,
software on that, and I thought it looked
yep.
so cool seeing that video.
Oh yeah, the blower fan and
Yeah, and
everything,
I
right?
mean, you got your
Yep,
toggles. You
yep.
pretty much have everything. I didn't see. I think do they also go horizontal during free fall and then drop, or
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that
I
either.
don't,
Yeah,
I've used simulators that do that, where
yeah,
they actually lift your hips up. And when you do things with your hands, it actually turns the simulator. You don't have controllers in your hands.
right.
It's cool. It's useful, but it's cumbersome, it's complex, it requires additional expense for a
Right.
drop zone. And for an individual, that's not going to be accessible
Right.
except for
I
the,
guess if it's
maybe
too
a
much,
few.
it's too far to reach. And that was the thing with Skydive Sim from beginning for me. I wanted it to be just off a headset. I didn't even want
Yep.
to do a PC version because I know that you have to buy a gaming PC for about $3,000, $4,000, and not
Yep.
everybody wants to do that. And that's the beauty of it. Technology's come so far. We started when it was Quest 1 and it could barely run it. And now with the Quest 3, 3S, I mean, we're pretty much running Google Earth in real
Yep.
time and
Yeah.
going anywhere we want, which is pretty
And
amazing.
and I just want to say thank you for getting that working, because it's a
Sure.
game
Oh,
changer.
it is. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
totally one of my
Yeah.
favorite features for sure. I mean, I don't even go to the regular scenes that we used to have anymore. And I think as a I mean, even for fun, but also as a training tool, it's definitely nice to be able to just go to any drop zone and just jump without having to do so much legwork ahead of time.
Absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So when you're not doing the coaching, you're building parachutes, right?
I'm making canopies. I'm repairing canopies, putting them back in service, relining, new sliders, and things like that. I'm also working with a company out in Colorado making throttles, which is a powered paragliding throttle toggle in one,
Okay.
which is it's really cool. So I do the sewing aspect of it. They use a 3D printer to create the device that kind of looks like a space shuttle control stick.
Okay.
Right. And it's got, the buttons for start the engine, stop the engine, throttle, of course. And you got, cruise control, which is actually quite useful.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I do whatever is necessary. I mean, from the very beginning, when I started, when I decided I'm going to find a way to not get a real job and stay in the skydiving industry, for the rest of my life, I've had to be very creative, and
Yeah.
so the books and the sewing and the teaching and just whatever, I'll do anything to not get a real job.
It's
It's that's not really it. It's not a dodge,
Yeah.
because this is my
This is
mission,
a real job and you're helping
Oh yeah.
people. I mean, I know everybody's life changes when they get skydive for the first time. A lot of
Yeah.
people quit their job and they become an instructor or they
Yep.
go
Wait,
into
they call
something,
it
you know?
cutting away, right? That's what
Exactly.
they call it, right?
Yeah. So,
Cutting
I
away.
mean, I think we all find our ways of doing something with the sport that we love. In your case, you are coaching it and you're also building parachutes, all that stuff. For me, I think it was what can I do that skydiving needs, and that
Yeah.
was for me. It was like I want to make a simulator that's accessible to everybody. I think
And you did.
that's
And you did.
important.
And it keeps getting better every time I look.
Well,
You push some update based on things that I said or somebody else
exactly. I
said.
was going to say
And
you've had a lot of input on that, on what direction to take or what to fix next, things like that, because
it's
you're
it's working great. I mean, just as it is, I know it'll keep progressing and getting better, but just as it is, out of the box, as it were, it's going to be a game changer
yeah,
for so many people that are scared of canopy flight, and hopefully trolling in the giant sea of the woofos, the non-skydivers. It's
yeah,
going to lead people to go, I always wanted to try it. How hard really is it to hit a target? Let's find out.
right, exactly.
How hard is altitude
I don't
awareness,
think a
which,
lot of people
you know,
realize actually how hard it is. It's not hard for us anymore because we've done it for years, but it's,
yeah,
the idea of flaring, for example, in the beginning for me, because it's like, okay, you slow down, and then you get scared sometimes because you get that forward motion and you're like, oh, I'm speeding up. So natural tendency is when you're new, you go up. So now you're just
yeah.
diving into the ground.
Bumper. Yeah, you get a surge. But I love how the sim gives you that feedback, right? If
Right.
you start your flare and come off, and I've caught many of the students that I do on the Wednesday meetups, where they start their flare and then they come up off the toggles, and as a result, the canopy surges and it goes crunch and everything turns red and it goes ouch, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, seriously, I know this is a game, but really try to take it seriously. And when you're landing, if you begin that flare process, Don't lift
Oh,
up on the
yeah.
toggles. And if you keep adding the brakes gently, maybe slower once you achieve a level off, it's going to keep the canopy going further and further and further behind you.
Right.
And just it's going to create the habits that we're looking for. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I love all the possibilities of what this creates.
Right. And you're doing a lot of real life coaching as well. I know
I
the
do.
season's coming up. So what you got going
Yeah.
on there?
Well, I have a lot of canopy courses in my past, and now I've got a bunch in my future that are already on the schedule. So I'm going to be going out to D Zone, which is a family of drop zones. One in Boise, Idaho, another one in Bozeman, Montana, and they're expanding, sort of in the way that you've got Skydive Spaceland
Right.
has multiple drop zones that are all kind of, dancing to the same music in terms of their training programs. And there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yes.
But this one's a franchise model. It's different.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm having meetings with Abby that owns that, and he's a great guy. And I'm gonna do a nice long trip out there and just do what I can to help. But I've got a bunch of other drop zones. Paraclete, I just nailed down Chesapeake. I'm going to be going to the ranch again. I go there every year up in New York. Kentucky, I'll be at Skydive Kentucky as well. But I still have open dates. So if anybody watching this are like, wouldn't it be interesting to get Brian actually in person at the drop zone to set up the hanging harness and do the VR training and all the other stuff? I can do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you say hanging harness, are you talking about the system I saw you had one time on one of your videos where it
Right.
actually pulls you and everything?
Right. It gimbals on both the roll axis and the pitch axis, which is great for, when you give a turn on only a toggle, especially if you're a little forceful on it, it creates an uncoordinated turn where the canopy skids to the outside. It's too much yaw and not enough roll. Right.
Right.
And if you can train people to lean into their turns, like when they're doing the skydive sim, I urge you to don't just sit neutral in the chair, but lean onto, if you're turning left, lean on your left butt cheek and lift your right butt cheek into the air so that you're developing the muscle memory. Well, the system that I build for drop zones is just basically parachute lines that are spectra, low friction, goes up through a carabiner, through another one, and down to the other riser. It's integral, right and left risers. So it rolls nicely. That's a game changer. People really improve dramatically. And the other thing is that I set up a Y line to their hip rings with a toggle on the end. So when they flare, I pull their hips forward and tilt the whole system on the pitch axis so they get used to what's actually going to happen and work on the body position changes from neutral to landing, where you bring your feet under your body, bring your butt back, you put your shoulders forward and your elbows back, like the rock stars all do. They look kind of similar. All great canopy pilots do at the moment of touchdown, because you have to, because it's how it's done. Yeah, it's really very helpful. It can be utilized with the sim as well, of course, but it's not required.
Right. I think that would be something I would love to actually try with the sim and kind of see, because you've seen I've kind of made my own little power cage with the hanging
It's
lines.
cool.
And I mean, I wanted to see what I can create that's, again, accessibility to everyone. So
Yeah.
originally I had to put a couple of points into the ceiling, into the studs. But I thought, not everybody's going to be able to do this safely, and they might just
Not
put
if
it,
they're renting.
yeah, or they might actually put it into the drywall, not realizing that you have to put it into a stud. So I didn't want to push that much. So I
Yeah.
found a power cage off of
Good
Amazon.
solution.
And yeah, that something is sturdy. It can hold, I think it says it can hold like up to 1,000 pounds, which I don't think anybody's going to go
I
that
hope
high.
not.
Yeah.
They can avoid the TSO if they
Yeah,
do.
and I mean, with that, I mean, it's so easy to build and have. It actually does add a lot. And the harness, it's a kiting harness. I found two of them now that work great. One was the original video, and then I found another one on Amazon, and I thought, let me give this one a try. It's $185 rather than about 250. So again, accessibility. I want everybody to be able to get these things, and just put them all in my description in the video and say, hey, if you want it, you can build it yourself.
Right.
So that's gonna,
Beautiful.
but I
Yeah.
mean, what I would like to do is actually at some point, either you teach me how to build what you have, or maybe at some point we'll get together
It's not
and
that
fly
complicated.
that thing.
I made a video.
Oh
It's
yeah.
on YouTube.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I should
I'll send
actually
you a
look
link.
at that and see if I
And
can
maybe,
combine it
yeah,
with my
maybe
power cage.
absolutely. And maybe you can post a link to that video. It's just a, free YouTube video just showing how I did it. And I know that somebody out there with, an engineering background, or at least that, predilection, can look at it and go, oh, that's great. But what if we also, and they'll make
Right.
it better. That's great.
And I did actually
That's
have a
great.
couple of skydivers. I can't remember what country they're in, but he has an engineering background, one of them, and he reached out if he can give them some data from Skydive Sim, because they want to build their own harness system that actually does a little bit of pooling and things like that. So, I mean,
That's great. Well, mention the pitching idea, because
definitely,
I
definitely.
believe it's possible to have a line that maybe servos or something like that. When you add the toggles, it pulls your hips forward.
Right.
Right. So you get a little bit more realism from that. That would get them to get used to compensating with the body position with regards to
Right.
the pitch axis. I've dreamt of it. I've tried it, with mechanical stuff, but the toggle pressure was too hard to pull my weight forward.
Right. Right.
I tried it though.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where you and I are very alike. We tend to want to try things and build things and, improve on it. Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
Skydive
Yeah.
Sim is basically a passion project for me still. It's just, it got a lot further than even I probably thought it would get. But, back in 2020, when I was starting it, I wanted Google Earth in there at that point, and there wasn't a way to do it just yet. So
Not
it's
until 2 months ago.
yeah, technology is, getting there, and everything's becoming more accessible, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think the market is more ready for it than ever before.
Very
Right?
true. Very true.
It used to be there's, the young kids that do gaming,
Right.
and then you have the grown-ups that do physical action in the real world.
Right. Right.
And now we're seeing that you can benefit. You don't have to become a full-on gamer and get Minecraft or whatever.
Right.
But, if it makes you a better skydiver, it makes you a safer skydiver.
Right. Right.
Oh, why the hell wouldn't you?
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't cost much, and it makes you that much safer.
It really does.
I remember when I started, actually, I would get a lot of people just saying that won't work. If I posted something, they would just make fun of it, things like that. And it's amazing. It's changed so much, because for a while I was afraid to post on Reddit anything because they seem to be the cruelest. But now I actually see other people posting about Skydive Sim, not just me. And if somebody says something negative, there's normally somebody else coming around and defending it. So so a lot has changed. You're right. People are more ready for it now, as you said, than they were before. It's like,
and they've seen videos.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they've seen us, like doing the meetups. Everybody, you high five, and I give a jump briefing and go and do it. You're like, and it's fun. They can feel that we're getting together. It's bringing people together.
True. And I mean, when we're in there, I catch myself, like when you're talking, I'm always looking at your avatar and kind of nodding, kind of like we're right there together. It's almost like I have to find your avatar and listen.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe you can turn my jumpsuit a different color so everybody immediately knows.
Well, I am looking into, in coming up versions. I don't know how soon we can do this, but maybe have your meta avatars actually be you. So whatever meta avatar you create as your avatar, then that person can be you. So everybody's individualized and whatever you got on. So, make it a lot more personalized.
Yeah.
Than
and for those that haven't used it, all you have to do is look above their head and you can see their handle, but it's usually not their name, right?
Right.
So this could personalize it. It's not necessary. It would make things a little bit
why
easier.
not? We've come this far, and it just gives us more to do and make it that much better.
Yeah, what do you mean? Either they could choose their color of their jumpsuit based on the real jumpsuit.
Yeah, that too. Exactly. And maybe change the canopies out, all sorts of things. Those are things that we've always, I've had it on my list. We've talked about. It's just, it's a small team, obviously, and everything's
Yeah.
independent. We're not a big studio, so it's kind of like, okay, what
Yeah.
can we do that will benefit the game the most with where we are
Yes.
right now, and then just build on
Yeah.
top of it.
You got to start with the big stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. They say if you wanted to fill up a bucket with, as much matter as possible, you start with the big rocks and then you pour the sand in after.
right,
Right. And so I think that's kind of what you've been doing from the beginning. Is
right.
how do we get the physics right? I ran all those physics tests and
Exactly.
the
That was the
turn rate and
biggest
things
part.
like that.
Yeah, the
And
biggest
that was
part was
really
to
helpful.
get the physics of the canopy correct, because
Yeah,
without
it's
it,
it's it's pretty darn good.
yeah,
It's pretty darn good. I mean, we once in a while we get people saying, "But what about rear risers?" Because
yeah,
that's an important part of
yeah,
canopy piloting is being able to flatten out your glide. And I just remind them that yes, we already have that function.
yeah.
It's just, adding some brakes and, it was just sort of a workaround because we don't have other control inputs available.
I know. I'm like thinking in my head, what other ones? Because we were using pretty much every single button on there,
Yeah.
and some of them are being used different ways depending on what state you're in. So it's
Yeah.
it's being used up. But of course, technology changes, and who knows? Who knows what we come up with next?
Honestly, it's fine. I think as long as people understand that in order to improve your glide on a real parachute, going to have brakes will only do that when you've got a tailwind.
Right.
Right. Otherwise, it's going to be basically unchanging or diminishing your
Right.
relative glide when you're facing into the wind. But at least we've got that function.
Right. And speaking
Yeah.
of wind, actually, have you experimented anymore with what we added?
Not
The
this week,
gust.
not this week, but I can do some.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Once I get working on these throttles, I've got 10 more throttles to manufacture. But
yeah.
then I'll take a little break, put on the goggles, and crank the winds up to 10 and see what it
Yeah,
does.
it's nice because now it
Mhm.
shifts. You can tell it to shift on you. You can tell it to gust on you, which is a lot more natural. And
Yep.
I mean, I like it a lot. I think it's definitely a nice addition that we've added in there.
That's great. And of course, the other thing that I think is valuable is to have two layers of wind, not just one, where
Okay,
they can select, the canopy winds and the landing winds, because that's the real world,
true.
right? Just because it's 10 miles an hour on the ground doesn't mean it's 40 at canopy
That's
altitude.
very true.
There might
We've been
still
there
be a
before.
dumpable bit. That's the way it works,
Yeah.
right? Because of the wind gradient. And so that's another one of those things that I'm always sending you work, but that
Yeah,
would be good work. That would be
definitely.
valuable for the realism of the sim.
Definitely. I'll definitely add that actually to the list of things we're doing. But yeah, I'll try to get more of these podcasts out. I know I disappeared for a while, so you know this. Not from you.
Not from my
Yeah,
perspective. I
not
talk
from
to you
you.
all the time.
I disappeared towards the third and fourth quarter of last year because we got an arcade deal. They wanted us to adapt Skydive Sim for their arcade in Barcelona. The arcade is called Alpha 5 XR Sports. And what
Complicated.
right. So they have the game, they call it Soft Drop, and it's an arcade version, and it's about a 6-minute experience. And it's more of a paragliding thing than skydiving, but I told you this already. We've put so much work into making the physics as real as possible. And when we talked to the arcade, they said, no, 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 no. We want this to be simple. We don't want it to be difficult. We want a 5-year-old or a 70-year-old to get on there and figure it out. So we just basically did down, up, right, left, and that's it. No free fall. But they've done a great job of setting up 8 stations in a room where you're hanging and you're actually sitting in real paragliding seats.
Harnesses,
Yeah, and then you're just
they're
patrolling
much
it.
more comfortable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're so much more comfortable.
Exactly. I thought about going that route with my system, but I just like the authenticity of having a harness that feels more like a skydiving setup.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's amazing. And I got to say, I'm really enjoying leading the groups, on the Wednesday nights, happy jump day.
Happy jump day. I know those are great. And I need to get back in there as well. I kind of missed a few for family and for also going out of town, things like that. But
yeah, join us tomorrow if you can.
I will try my best. Yeah.
I've been trying to, pick new, of course we use airports at the beginning, right?
Right.
Jumping onto skydiving centers so they can kind of get used to just the simple stuff and staying in formation, landing on a target with a prescribed pattern. But when they start looking good, yeah, hey, let's go to the Tetons.
Yeah,
That's what
I love
I'm
actually
planning
those
on doing.
sessions where we're just following each other down these mountains, and it's just a lot of fun.
It is, yeah. It was amazing, and it's also given me a lot of kind of a sense of awe of the planet we live on.
Right, because you're
exploring more.
discovering too. Yeah, exactly. It's like you got pretty much the whole Earth at your fingertips, and you can go wherever you want. It's amazing.
Yep, and then go, sight it out in jetpack and that sort of thing. That's very nice to be able to see things
Shoot
that way
back
as
up.
well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
I like.
And I use that for teaching too.
Oh, you do?
Like this is what it'll look when you're 300 feet on a no-wind day. The target will be at this angle.
Okay.
And then I can go to the 600-foot mark. This is what your heading would be at, with respect to the wind line, and that's the angle. Right. So they're learning the three-dimensionality of it just from me hovering in that 3D space at the right.
I'm glad that's helping out that way too. The original idea was we would end up landing on a mountain and we had no way of getting back up. So that's why
it's a great solution, and it's crazy fun. I still am occasionally struggling with, how to maneuver exactly, but I think that
it's become second nature for me. I'm just like,
it's the turns in place.
Yeah, the turns in place. Yeah, it's like you have to do. I feel like it's like this, and if you have this one down a bit, this one up, you'll start going this way, and then this.
Okay.
So
I've been trying this vectoring.
The free fall is probably in your mind still, but this is like, think of it as the jetpack shooting. So this is your force. So it's like
fore and aft forces. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I will try that. I mean, I can go where I want to go, but there's been a few times.
What's happening here? Exactly, right?
So if other people are struggling, you're not the only one.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you might even, down the road, start to play with the, the controls just subtly and make it even more precise, so that we can, fly up. I mean, I enjoy doing that where you're on jetpacks and you hover at an altitude.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that in the groups where after we land, I say, all right, let's meet up at 4,500 feet or something.
Yeah, it's direct, cool.
Straight up, and everybody meets there, and you can see the whole group. You cut off the jets and then pull.
Yeah, it's like getting a second ride.
And it's faster than replaying the level.
For sure. Well, Brian, I know you're pretty tied up. You got to get back to sewing some stuff.
I wouldn't call it tied up. I love my life.
Yeah, me too.
You get to do a lot of cool stuff.
Me too. It's great to just live your passion, right?
Yeah. It's the only way I could live.
Yeah, same here. Definitely. Well, thanks so much for talking to me, and I will catch you pretty soon. We're talking pretty much every week, so I'll be talking to you about that.
Awesome. Thank you again for doing what you do, and I look forward to even more. All right, bye.